So hello everyone, we are going to start doing this simulation with this Opus simulator. We're going to review the fetal anatomy in the next 25 minutes or so. So to start, we remember that to check the anatomy, we have already done the 6-step approach. So we already know the fetal lie-in position. We already know that the fetus has cardiac activity, so the fetus is alive. We have also checked that this is a singleton pregnancy, so we know already there is only one baby. We have also checked, as you can see here, the placental position, anterior in this case. We have also checked that the amniotic fluid volume is normal. And finally, we have probably done some first approach to the fetal biometry, which is going to be included in this fetal anatomy review anyway. So to start our fetal anatomy review, we are going to do the first sweep, the first overview sweep. So this sweep is a longitudinal sweep from the pelvis of the mother to the fundus of the uterus. So we are going to start here, and we see this rounded structure here is the head. So we know this baby is cephalic. So we sweep upwards towards the fundus of the uterus, and we start recognizing some of the anatomical structures. We see the thorax, we see the abdomen of the baby as we go upwards, and we finally see here the pelvis and the tip of the spine. So doing so, we have reviewed the first the anatomy, the fetal anatomy for the first time. So we have checked that there are no major or gross anomalies that we can identify in this first longitudinal overview. We just did the first sweep, the first overview sweep, and now we need to go to the fetal spine. So from this sweep, we are going to rotate our probe 90 degrees because we are going to obtain the sagittal view of the spine with the skin covering. So now I have rotated my probe 90 degrees, and now I'm getting close to the image of the fetal spine, the sagittal spine. So I'm just angling to find the proper image here, because I need to see the whole spine and I need to see the skin covering the spine. So here, just by doing this rotation and slightly angling forward my probe, I can find this sagittal view of the spine with the skin covering. And now with this view, I can start excluding anomalies like the spina bifida and myelomeningocele, for example. Now, this is the first plane. We're going to move on to the second plane, which is a coronal view of the fetal spine. And to do so, we move here, we angle our probe backwards and slide forwards to finally find this coronal view of the spine here. And here I can see the whole spine from the cervix, from the cervical region to the coccyx of the baby. And here, for example, I can make sure that I have all the vertebrae in place. And now to go to the third plane, which is a coronal view of the fetal body, I just need to slide my probe towards baby's body like this. And here I have an overview of the whole fetal body, a coronal view. And this is, for example, a very good view to rule out defects of the fetal diaphragm, for example, because I can see here the diaphragm And I can see here the stomach below the diaphragm. So now we move on from the fetal spine to the fetal head. So remember, we were in a coronal view of the whole body. So we need to rotate our probe 90 degrees to obtain a transverse view of the fetus again. And we find the fetal head. So now in the fetal head, we need to find planes number 4, 5, and 6. Plane number 4 is the transventricular plane. And here we can locate our transventricular plane. Remember, we need to see the landmarks to make sure we are in the correct plane. So here we see the cavum of septum pellucidity, and we see here the posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So now we are in plane number 4. We could measure the BPD, the biparietal diameter here, or we could use plane number 5, which is the transthalamic plane. I'm going to take the biparietal diameter in the transventricular plane. Remember, you can also take it in the transthalamic plane, but it depends on the charts you use. So I use the charts for transventricular plane. So here I find my transventricular plane again. I zoom in a little bit so I can check that I'm going to put the calipers in the right place. So now I freeze the image. So I have all the landmarks for the transventricular plane. And we're going to start with the biparietal diameter in the outer to outer fashion. We start here in a perpendicular manner up to here. So now we have our first measurements, and we move on to the head circumference now. And for that, I'm going from the back to the front, and I make sure this surrounds the whole head circumference, and there you have the two important measurements, or the two basic measurements of the fetal head, which are the biparietal diameter and the head circumference. We can go from this transventricular plane to the transthalamic plane just by sliding down our probe a little bit, and we find the landmarks for the transthalamic plane here. We can see the cavum, we can see the anterior horns of the lateral ventricle, we can see the thalami here, and the hippocampal gyrus here. And finally, we move back to plane number 4. We keep our probe as still as possible here to keep the cavum here, and we rotate towards the cerebellum here, our probe. And here we can finally get our plane number 6, which is a transcerebellar plane, where we can take the measurement of the cerebellum. So now that we are done with the fetal head, we move on to the fetal heart. And to do so, in this transverse way we're doing. So we find here a nice 4-chamber view of the heart, and that would be plane number 7, in which you have to assess that the size of the heart is about 1/3 of the whole thorax, and it's normal in this case. You can check the 2 ventricles, also more or less symmetrical, and the same way with the atrium. You can also check, apart from the heart, you can check the lungs surrounding the heart, and you can see here that these 2 lungs have normal echogenicity and they have normal appearance. So this is plane number 7, the 4 chambers view. And now we move on to plane number 8, which is the left ventricular outflow tract, where we are going to check not only the interventricular septum, but also the outflow from the left ventricle of the heart. So to do so, you need to rotate your probe towards the right shoulder of the baby, this way. And like this, you can see the integrity of the septum up to the aortic valve here. And you can also check the aortic valve, which looks moving freely here. So this is, again, plane number 8, left ventricular outflow tract. And to move on to plane number 9, we have to go back to the 4-chamber view of the heart, rotating back. So now that we are back here, we go to plane 9, which is the right ventricular outflow tract. And to do so, we need to slide upwards our probe slowly, so we can check here where we see, when we see the pulmonary artery here. This is the pulmonary valve right here, and this is the pulmonary branching here. So this is the right ventricular outflow tract. And finally, to get to plane 10, which is the 3-vessel trachea view, you just slide your probe upwards, and here you can see the 3 vessels, the pulmonary, the aorta, and the superior vena cava. And also you can see this structure here, which is the trachea, to complete our view or our plane number 10. And with this, we finalize the checking of the baby's heart. So we move on from the fetal heart to the fetal abdomen, and we will find plane number 11, which would be the plane to measure the abdominal circumference. So to do so, we need to find out our landmarks here. So we can see this is a nice plane number 11, where we can see the stomach, we can see a portion of the umbilical vein, and we can see a whole rib, a complete rib. So we make sure we are not oblique, and we can measure the abdominal circumference. So I'm going to freeze to zoom up so we can see better the landmarks here. I'm going to freeze here. And now I'm going to measure the abdominal circumference, going from the back to the front of the baby, and then using the ellipse to comply the whole abdominal circumference there. From here, we slide down our probe towards the fetal pelvis to find plane number 12, which would be the cord insertion. And here we see the cord inserting in the fetal abdomen. So with this image, we can rule out abnormalities such as gastroschisis or exomphalos. And finally, we move on to plane number 13. We go backwards to find both kidneys. Here is the right kidney, and here the left kidney. And we can also see 2 nice normal renal pelvises. So that would be then plane number 13. And with this, we finish the reviewing the fetal abdomen. So now we move on to the fetal limbs. So we're going to start with the legs. And to get to the legs, we need to start from the fetal pelvis. So we could start from plane number 14, which was the bladder and the 2 umbilical arteries. You see here, that's plane number 14. And here, as the legs are attached to the fetal pelvis, and we can start seeing part of the fetal femur, as you see here. So once you have found a part of the fetal femur, you start angling and sliding your probe in order to get the whole fetal femur diaphysis here. So that would be plane number 15, the fetal femur, where we're going to measure the femur later on. So to measure the fetal femur, again, we come to plane 15. We have seen already. We have a nice view of the whole diaphysis of the femur. We can zoom up a little bit here so we can see the edges to measure it properly. And we freeze the image now to measure it. So we use here this tool and we measure our femur from one side of the femur to the other one. And there we have the femur length. And then we move on to plane 16, which would be the 3 bones of the leg, so that you have to start angling and rotating your probe. You never know how the legs are positioned, so you have to find a way of finding your bones without lifting the probe so you don't get lost. So once you see here the tibia and slide forward to see the fibula and the carrying angle of the foot, now you have plane number 16. You have checked the 3 bones of the leg. Obviously, once you've finalized one of the legs, you need to move to the second leg and do exactly the same procedure. Then we need to move to plane number 17, which are the fetal bones of both arms. And to do so, we need to move back to the fetal thorax. So we come from the legs, we move our probe back to the 4-chamber view of the heart in order to find the humerus, which would be near to the thorax. So exactly the same way you did with the femur and the pelvis, you do with the thorax and the humerus. And here you can see we are at the level of the thorax, as you saw before. And here we can see part of the humerus, and then you start sliding and rotating your probe in order to find the whole length of the humerus. And also in this same plane, you see the radio and the ulna and the angle of the hand, the relationship between the 3 parts of this arm. Then you move forward through the baby's body to find the other arm. So here you can start seeing the humerus, and again you can see much better here the ulna and the radius and the angle of the hand. So you see there is a right proportion and relationship of the 3 parts of this arm again. So now we're going to check the baby's face, which are the final planes of the fetal anatomy. And to do so, we need to start from the fetal head again. So we need to come back to a transventricular plane. In this case, the baby is facing upwards, so you only see the anterior horns of the lateral ventricles. But then you start from there and you slide your probe towards the orbits here, and a little bit downwards you can see the baby's nose, the nostrils, and the upper lip. So that would make the plane number 18, which is the coronal view of the nose, the nostrils, and the upper lip. Here you can see the integrity of the upper lip. Now you go back to the orbits there, and you can see both orbits symmetrical, and you can also see the lenses within these orbits. So that would be plane number 19. And finally, we need to get a facial profile, so a sagittal view of the face to get to plane number 20. So we need to rotate our probe about 90 degrees. We do it slowly. to have a nice view of the fetal profile, which is the one that is most frequently requested by the parents. So you can see here the forehead, the nose, the lips, and the chin. And in this case, you can roll out frontal bossing, for example. You can roll out signs of cleft lip, for example, or microretrognathia with this normal facial profile. So with this, we finish checking the face of the baby. So we are going to finish with the second overview, which is the second sweep, which is a transverse sweep of the whole body, starting from the neck of the baby to the sacrum. And we are going to check every one of the vertebrae to make sure everything looks okay in this view. So we start from the fetal neck, as you can see here. You can rule out cystic hygroma, for example, that would be very obvious here. And you start sweeping upwards towards the sacrum, and you check each one of the vertebrae. Here you can see the bodies of the vertebrae one by one here, and you end up here at the level of the sacrum. So that would be the second sweep. We finish our review of the fetal anatomy. This is a very thorough and comprehensive way of checking the fetal anatomy. If you use this approach, you can exclude up to 50 abnormal appearances of the fetus, and you will have a very, very complete exam of the baby's anatomy. So with this, I want to thank everybody for your attention. I want to thank Opus for giving me the opportunity of using this marvelous simulator. And I hope we can all still learn using these amazing tools. Thank you very much.